Most people believe love feels hard today because people have changed. Dating has become confusing, trust is harder to find, and many people seem afraid to truly open their hearts. But what if love itself isn't the problem? What if the real problem is what many of us carry into love before we even meet the right person? Past heartbreak, fear of rejection, insecurity, trust issues, and the need to protect ourselves can quietly shape the way we love. And sometimes, the very things we do to avoid getting hurt are the same things that make real connection harder. When someone pulls away, we may chase them. When someone gets close, we may become afraid. When we get hurt, we may build walls and promise ourselves that we will never be that vulnerable again. We often blame the other person. We blame dating apps, social media, modern relationships, or the lack of good partners. But those explanations only show us the surface. Underneath them can be something much deeper. The way we learn to protect ourselves, the beliefs we formed from past experiences, and the fears we bring into new relationships. And that's why two people can experience the same kind of love and react in completely different ways. So the real question isn't simply, why does love feel so hard today? The deeper question is, what is happening inside us that makes love so difficult to trust, receive, and maintain? Because once we understand that, we may discover that the problem with love isn't always finding the right person. Sometimes, it's learning how to show up when we finally find them. Subscribe to Varry Stories now and enjoy why love feels so hard today as we journey ahead. One of the biggest reasons love feels so hard today is that many people are not entering relationships with a completely open heart. They are entering with memories. Someone may meet a kind person, but still expect to be hurt. Someone may finally find a partner who wants to love them, but still keep looking for signs that the relationship will fail. Another person may say they want love, but the moment someone gets too close, they start pulling away. From the outside, these behaviors can look confusing. People may say, they are too needy, or they don't care, or they have commitment issues, or they are just toxic. But those labels do not always explain what is really happening. Sometimes, the behavior is coming from fear. A person who constantly needs reassurance may not simply be needy. They may have learned that love can disappear without warning. A person who keeps their feelings hidden may not be cold. They may have learned that showing too much emotion gives someone the power to hurt them. A person who becomes controlling may not simply want control. They may be terrified of losing someone they deeply care about. And a person who acts like they do not care may actually care more than they want anyone to know. This is where love becomes complicated. Our past experiences can teach us certain beliefs about relationships. If someone was cheated on, they may start believing that people cannot be trusted. If someone was rejected again and again, they may start believing they are not enough. If someone gave everything to a person who took advantage of them, they may decide that being vulnerable is dangerous. The experience happens first. Then the mind creates a belief. The belief creates fear. The fear changes the person's behavior. And that behavior can eventually create problems in the next relationship. For example, imagine someone who was deeply hurt in the past. They tell themselves, I will never allow anyone to hurt me like that again. So when they meet someone new, they refuse to open up. They take longer to trust. They hide their feelings. They avoid difficult conversations. They keep one foot outside the relationship just in case they need to leave. At first, this feels like protection. But slowly, the other person begins to feel unwanted. They may think, why won't this person let me get close? They may stop trying. The relationship becomes distant. And eventually, the person who was afraid of being abandoned may experience exactly what they were trying to prevent. They get abandoned. Now they believe their fear was correct. This creates a painful cycle. They were hurt, so they built a wall. The wall protected them from vulnerability. But the same wall also blocked intimacy. This is one of the deepest problems with how we protect ourselves in love. The defense that protects you can eventually become the wall that isolates you. And this does not mean people should ignore their pain or trust everyone blindly. It means we have to understand the difference between protection and avoidance. A boundary says, I know what I will accept and what I will not accept. A wall says, nobody gets close enough to hurt me. Those two things may look similar from the outside, but they come from very different places. A boundary is built from self-respect. A wall is often built from fear, and fear can make us behave in ways that do not match who we really are. Think about someone who gets a message from their partner and does not receive a reply for several hours. One person may think they are probably busy. Another may think they are losing interest. Another may become angry and send several messages. Another may decide to ignore the person when they finally reply. The situation is the same, but the reaction is different. Why? Because the message is not creating the entire reaction. The person's beliefs are helping create it. One person feels safe. Another feels rejected. Another feels abandoned. Another feels that they need control. This is why understanding yourself matters so much in relationships. Sometimes we think we are reacting to what our partner did, when we are actually reacting to what their behavior reminded us of. A simple disagreement can remind someone of being ignored as a child. A delayed message can remind someone of being cheated on. A partner asking for space can feel like rejection to someone who has been abandoned before. The current relationship may be new, but the emotional response may be very old. And if we do not recognize that, we can make our current partner pay for the mistakes of someone who came before them. That is not fair to us, and it is not fair to them. This is also why chasing someone who keeps pulling away often makes things worse. The more afraid we become of losing them, the harder we try to hold on. We send more messages. We ask more questions. We demand more reassurance. We try to control the situation. But the other person may begin to feel trapped. They pull away even more. We become even more afraid. So we chase harder. The cycle continues. The same thing can happen in the opposite direction. Someone becomes afraid of being controlled, so they become emotionally distant. Their partner notices the distance and tries harder to connect. They feel pressured and pull away even more. Now both people are reacting from fear. One is afraid of losing the relationship. The other is afraid of losing themselves. Neither person may actually want the relationship to fail, but both are protecting themselves in ways that slowly damage the relationship. This is why simply telling people to communicate more is not always enough. Before communication can improve, people sometimes have to understand what is happening inside them. What am I afraid of? What am I assuming? Why does this situation affect me so strongly? Am I reacting to what is happening now, or to something that happened before? What do I actually need from my partner? And what am I expecting my partner to fix for me? These questions can change everything. Because love does not only bring out our happiness, it can also bring out our fears. When someone becomes important to us, suddenly we have something to lose. That can make us more vulnerable. And vulnerability can be uncomfortable. We may want closeness, but fear what closeness could cost us. We may want someone to know us deeply, but fear what they might think when they see the parts of us we normally hide. So we protect ourselves. We pretend not to care. We become overly independent. We keep secrets. We test our partner. We look for signs that they will leave. We create distance before they have the chance to create it. And sometimes, without realizing it, we destroy the connection we wanted so badly. But this does not mean we are broken. It means we have learned certain ways of protecting ourselves. And what we learned can be changed. The goal is not to blame yourself for having fear. The goal is to become aware of it. Because the behavior may be unhealthy, but understanding where it comes from is the first step toward changing it. And this is where the problem becomes even more interesting, because understanding why we behave this way is only half the solution. The next question is what we should do differently. Once people realize that fear and past experiences can affect the way they love, they often make another mistake. They swing to the opposite extreme. They say, then I just won't care anymore. I won't trust anyone. I'll never be vulnerable again. I'll become emotionally detached. I'll make sure nobody has the power to hurt me. It sounds strong, but sometimes it is just another form of fear. You are no longer running toward someone. Now you are running away from everyone. The goal is not to become colder. The goal is to become wiser. Healthy love does not mean giving someone complete control over your happiness, but it also does not mean keeping everyone at a distance. It means learning how to love while still knowing who you are. You can care deeply without losing yourself. You can trust someone without ignoring warning signs. You can be vulnerable without giving up your boundaries. You can love someone and still know when something is not healthy for you. That balance is what many people are missing. The first step is understanding yourself. Before asking, why does my partner act like this? Sometimes you need to ask, why does this affect me so much? Pay attention to your triggers. What makes you afraid? What makes you feel rejected? What makes you feel like you are losing control? What makes you suddenly want to leave? What makes you need constant reassurance? These questions are not meant to shame you. They are meant to help you understand yourself. Because when you understand what is happening inside you, you have more control over what you do next. You can feel jealous without becoming controlling. You can feel afraid without making your partner responsible for removing every fear. You can feel hurt without trying to hurt the other person back. You can feel angry without becoming disrespectful. That is emotional maturity. It does not mean you never feel difficult emotions. It means difficult emotions do not automatically control your behavior. The second step is learning to communicate instead of assuming. This sounds simple, but it can completely change a relationship. A person may notice their partner becoming quiet and immediately think, they don't love me anymore. Instead of asking what happened, they become distant too. Now both people are sitting with assumptions. One person thinks, they don't care. The other thinks, they are angry with me. Neither person knows what the other is actually thinking, and a small misunderstanding becomes a bigger problem. Healthy communication gives both people a chance to explain what is really happening. Instead of saying, you never care about me, you can say, when this happened, I felt ignored, and I want to understand what you meant. That changes the conversation. One attacks, the other explains. But in the second example, both people have a chance to understand each other. Communication does not mean talking all the time. It means being honest enough to say what you feel instead of expecting your partner to read your mind. Your partner cannot always know what is happening inside you, and you cannot always know what is happening inside them. That is why assumptions can be so dangerous. The third step is maintaining boundaries. Love does not require you to accept everything. You can forgive someone and still decide that a certain behavior cannot continue. You can understand why someone behaves a certain way without allowing them to hurt you. You can care about someone and still walk away from a relationship that is unhealthy. This is where many people get confused. They think boundaries mean they do not love enough. But boundaries can actually protect love. Without boundaries, resentment can grow. One person keeps giving. The other keeps taking. One person keeps saying yes when they really mean no. Eventually, the relationship becomes filled with anger and disappointment. Healthy boundaries allow both people to understand where the line is. And when both people respect that line, trust can grow. This creates a very different relationship pattern. The old pattern looks like this. Fear creates a reaction. The reaction creates conflict. The conflict creates distance. The distance creates more fear. Then the cycle repeats. But a healthier pattern looks different. Awareness creates a pause. The pause creates better communication. Communication creates understanding. Understanding makes it easier to respect boundaries. And boundaries create a safer space for connection. This does not mean every relationship will work. Some relationships should end. Some people will not respect your boundaries. Some people will not communicate honestly. Some people will continue hurting you even after you clearly explain the problem. Understanding psychology does not mean making excuses for harmful behavior. It means learning to see clearly. And sometimes seeing clearly means realizing that the person you love is simply not capable of giving you the kind of relationship you need. That can hurt, but it is better than spending years trying to change someone who does not want to change. There is another important truth here. The way you respond to love often reveals the way you see yourself. If you believe you are not enough, you may constantly need someone to prove that they love you. If you believe people always leave, you may struggle to trust someone who stays. If you believe being vulnerable makes you weak, you may hide your feelings even when you desperately want to be understood. If you believe you must earn love, you may keep giving more and more until you have nothing left for yourself. This is why relationship problems are not always just about the relationship. Sometimes love exposes the relationship you have with yourself. It shows you what you believe about rejection. It shows you what you believe about trust. It shows you what you believe you deserve. And it shows you what you are afraid of losing. That is why the healthiest relationship is not one where nobody ever gets hurt. It is one where both people can recognize when they are hurt and choose what to do with that pain. They can say, "This hurt me," without turning it into an attack. They can say, "I need space," without using distance as punishment. They can say, "I was wrong," without feeling that they have lost their power. They can say, "I love you," without becoming dependent on the other person's approval. That is the balance. You do not need to become completely independent and never need anyone. And you do not need to become so dependent that you forget yourself. You need connection without losing your identity. You need love without abandoning your self-respect. You need vulnerability with boundaries. You need trust with awareness. And most importantly, you need the ability to look at your own behavior before constantly judging your partner's. Because sometimes the person standing in front of you is not the only reason the relationship feels difficult. Sometimes they are touching wounds you never knew were still there. And that does not mean you should blame yourself. It means you finally have something you can work on. Maybe the problem was never that love became too hard. Maybe we simply brought too many fears into it and expected another person to make those fears disappear. We don't need to become colder to protect ourselves. We need to become more aware. We don't need to stop loving. We need to learn how to love without abandoning ourselves. Because healthy relationships are not built by two perfect people who never get hurt. They are built by two imperfect people who understand themselves, communicate honestly, respect boundaries, and are willing to grow together. And maybe that is what love has been asking from us all along. Not to become fearless, but to become brave enough to understand our fear before we let it control the way we love.
Thank you for watching, and please subscribe to this channel, and if you didn't understand, please watch again.